today we're going to cover three different things: the business income interruption insurance coverage, why aren't COVID-related claims being covered, and then workers' compensation. Can my employee file a workers' comp claim against me if they contract COVID-19? I was talking with a dentist who their employees are afraid to come back to work, and and they are sometimes a little afraid for their employees to come back because they think, what will actually happen if this person does get coronavirus? Am I going to be stuck paying for their health care? And then for general liability, will general liability help if a patient files a bodily injury claim? So just as a disclaimer, as a broker, our role is to educate, and I want to provide that transparency on what is happening in the insurance industry. But clearly the authority to accept or reject any type of insurance claims are held by the insurance carrier claims department. No broker can say, yes, for sure, I can promise you that you will get this coverage, or no, that claim cannot be accepted. So that really is within the authority of the insurance carrier. And I'm hoping that through this whole process that practice owners who have been concerned about their insurance, that they have been able to talk with their insurance agents, they've been able to talk with their insurance brokers about all of this. And if they haven't, please reach out to us, because I think that's the biggest part, is having a relationship with your insurance broker to actually understand what is happening with your insurance policies and what your liabilities are in your office. So again, for business income interruption coverage, that's such a long name. So just for the purpose of our webinar, I'm going to call it BI for short. So why isn't it covered, and what actually is BI coverage? Okay, so most people don't know this, but BI coverage is triggered by property damage only. Right now there's legislation coming out of the 4 states of Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, and Ohio, because they want to push that COVID-related claims should be covered. I've had, especially in March, my phone was ringing off the hook of my practice owners who were asking, is this covered? And rest assured, with business interruption insurance coverage, it's a standard. People don't actually have to buy it separately. It's a component in their general office policy. And I want to be able to explain what it actually is. So when a practice does not have any type of property damage and they're able to generate the revenue riot or civil commotion, explosion, wind. Most of the only exceptions are things like earthquake. Here in California, earthquake and flood are not covered. But other types of perils like that, what I have mentioned, if there is, or if their roof collapses, or a neighboring tree breaks part of their window, and now part of their practice has now suffered because they're not able to open and they're not able to generate the revenue that they normally would if there were no property damage, that is the only time that business interruption insurance coverage actually kicks in. So once the practice is damaged and the patients are not able to come in, there's no more regular revenue, that's when BI coverage kicks in. This definition that is from an insurance policy is very lengthy, but I think it gives a good succinct explanation to what BI is. We will pay for the actual loss of business income you sustained due to the necessary suspension of your operations during the period of restoration caused by direct physical damage to property. So the BI coverage only pays for the business income during that time that your property is actually being restored. And I think having that educational piece is so important, because that's where a lot of the frustration has been when people say, hey, my business has been interrupted. What about virus exclusions? Most office policies on the business income interruption insurance coverage, they have a virus exclusion on there anyway. And that was something that the insurance industry put on after the SARS epidemic back in 2003, 2004. There have been some very creative attempts by people saying, but COVID-19 contaminated the property in my office. There was property damage. Well, it's not really property damage if you can wipe the virus off with a cleansing wipe or some type of disinfectant towel. It does not meet the property damage guidelines. There has also been frustration from business owners that have said, well, what about the denial of access to property due to civil authority? Or my supply chain has now been disrupted due to COVID-19. There are a lot of different reasons besides COVID-19 why a business income has been interrupted for a practice. But if none of those can get past the actual insurance agreement of requiring physical damage to initiate that coverage, none of those claims will be approved. Do I think that there will be BI coverage for pandemics in the future? There could possibly be, but I think right now it's too early to tell. I don't think that lawsuit that these states are trying to promote to cover COVID-19 related claims will be successful, because if that were to be the case, all of these insurance carriers would have to actually change the actual definition of business income interruption insurance coverage. They'd have to change those contracts. They'd have to go back in time, which you can't really do on an insurance policy. And then you would have the problem of literally almost every single business owner would have a rightful claim that their business has been interrupted. So that's the first policy that I wanted to talk about. The second one is with workers' compensation. A generalization of the definition of workers' comp is that it provides medical and wage benefits to people who are injured or become ill at work. I'm about to share something with you. You may have already heard this, so this may be old news to you. But when I heard this news, to be honest, my stomach churned and I got a little nervous. And my role is to be transparent and share with you what has occurred. On May 6th, California Governor Newsom signed an executive order that if an employee becomes diagnosed with COVID-19, their medical treatment is to be paid for by their employer's workers' comp insurance. And this applies to the period of March 19th until July 5th. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh my goodness, but how can an employee prove they got COVID-19 from their employer's dental practice? They could have gotten it at the grocery store. They could have gotten it, at their neighbor's house when they couldn't find any more toilet paper and had to, buy a roll from their neighbor, or they could have gotten it from anywhere. How can they actually prove that they got it from the workplace? And Governor Newsom's order, it's only applicable to employees who have to work outside of the home. So if an employee were to work from the home only and they get COVID-19, then there is no claim for them. However, in a dental practice, if you have an employee who actually goes into the facility, which 99% of them have to, and if they contract COVID-19 during that period that I had mentioned of March, what was the day? From March 19 through July 5th, then they would be considered eligible for workers' comp to pay for their medical needs. If employee needs medical care for COVID-19, so what would happen is they go to the urgent care, they go to the hospital or whatever health facility they go to, then that nurse is going to ask, do you work outside of the home? If the person's answer is yes, and that's fine. If the person says, yes, I do, I have to go into my dental office because I'm a hygienist there, then the health insurance and health facilities, they're going to be able to mark, okay, this is going to be tagged as a workers' comp claim. Just like if someone were to come into the urgent care and they said, I have a needle stick injury or I fell at work, then they don't have to provide their own medical ID card for coverage. So that's how that's going to be tracked. Now, other states may vary, but as of now, California is the most lenient in favor of the employee. And in fact, as of now, California is the only state that I know of that is doing this. In other places, it would be very difficult because the employee would have to prove that they contracted it at work. And in Governor Newsom's executive order, he places the burden on the insurance carrier to prove that it was not contracted at work. Well, obviously, we know that the insurance carrier cannot prove that they got it to provide the medical benefits for any employee who works outside of the home who contracts COVID-19. So how does this workers' compensation presumption affect your bottom line? Well, workers' comp premiums, they are going to go up across the board. The organization in California that monitors the rates for workers' compensation for all of the different industries that we have in California, whether it's construction, hospitality, professional services, that group is called the California Workers' Comp Insurance Rating Bureau. And they predict, it's a very large range, but they predict a mid-range estimate that this will cost the workers' comp industry in California $11.2 billion in COVID-related claims just from that March to July 5th timeframe. And workers' compensation carriers, they profit when there are low claims and high payroll. Well, right now, what we see in the workers' comp industry, because of the COVID-related claims from employees, we're going to have very high claims and very low payroll. Low payroll because obviously many employees are unemployed, and also even if someone is employed, perhaps their hours have gone down. So because of the changes that we've seen with high claims and low payroll, it's only going to create a premium increase. And the premium increase that we're probably going to see is going to be a reflection of the overall health of the workers' compensation insurance system. You may have a totally squeaky clean loss runs report. You've never had any claims, but in general, we are going to see an overall increased rates. And our dedication to you from Dentist Insure is that we are going to continue looking for what those best rates are. So to my last topic is general liability. General liability offers coverage due to bodily injury as long as it's caused by an accident or occurrence. So potential claims that we might see for this is a patient, vendor, or anyone that is not an employee could try to make the claim that your practice caused them bodily injury because there was a failure to sanitize or a failure to prevent the spread of COVID-19 or any other reason. So does my general liability policy help me? In short, no, but listen on. So the bad news is that if a patient contracts COVID-19, it's not an accident. Like if a patient on office equipment and suffered bodily injury because he sprained his ankle. It's not a documentable accident that can be occurred employee. For your patients, vendors, or anyone else who comes into your office, that person has to prove that they contracted COVID-19 in your practice. There's a lot of guesswork as to where and how they contracted COVID-19, and it would be very difficult to sustain those lawsuits. That person has to prove that your office is guilty of negligible conduct and ultimately legally liable. So I hope that that gives you some good news in terms of patient safety. But of course, warning, litigation may still occur. There will be creative attempts by creative lawyers who will take up the cause of the patient who has COVID-19. Due diligence on making sure that it's almost near impossible for anybody who steps foot into your practice to provide that burden of proof. One thing I didn't mention yet, and I didn't have it in the PowerPoint, is for employment practices liability insurance. Some of the claims that we're seeing is like, let's say scenarios where there used to be 30 people in the workforce, now it got reduced to 15, and Susie is wondering, hey, why was my position let go? And Tom, who's not as good of an employee, is still working. There can be a rash, we will see a rash of claims of people who will say that they were harassed or that they were unfairly discriminated against. Maybe I was let go because of my gender. I wasn't given as much hours because of my race or sexual orientation, or whatever discrimination clause they choose to bring up. So there will be a rash of these type of claims that will occur. Right now for EPLI insurance, which is a policy I used to sell on a very regular basis to protect practice owners from HR related claims, unfortunately, as of like last week, all of the insurance carriers that I know of for San Diego and Southern California have withdrawn from the market. There is too much risk for them to continue to insure HR related claims. And so if you currently have an HR related policy, there will be coverage for the existing term of that policy. However, I've already had a couple of my clients who have an HR policy to help with HR related claims. However, those insurance carriers have decided that they are not going to renew. So given that message, I think it's very important to put on your risk management hat also for the HR sphere. So thank you and best wishes to you and your practice at this time. Please visit our website, dentistsure.com, and you'll be able to get a hold of myself. I run the property and casualty division. However, we do have my other partners who handle the life, disability, and health division. So thank you so much, and that concludes my part of the presentation.